Good evening, everybody. I'm Mark Halperin. Welcome to Two-Way Tonight. Thank you for joining. Today was dominated in our world by two things: the aftermath of the horrible crash, additional reporting about some of the elements involved as people begin to try to piece together what might have gone wrong. FBI investigation is expected to take some time, but there is a search immediately at the age of transparency for some sort of explanation. And Donald Trump's reaction to it, particularly at 11 o'clock today, a little after 11, when he held a press conference in the White House briefing room, accompanied by his new Secretary of Defense, his new Secretary of the Treasury, and Vice President Vance. We'll show you some of that. The other action was on Capitol Hill. Three controversial Trump nominees, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, all going through confirmation hearings. We'll also show you some of that. We've got great guests to talk about it with. And as always, we want your participation. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, please raise your hand. We'd love to get folks in today. As always, if you've never raised your hand before, tonight could be the night you join us. We hope that it will be. So again, if you're new to the platform or not new to the platform but never raised your hand, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. If you're watching on YouTube or X, as always, this platform stands for peace, love, and understanding and the presumption of grace. So if you choose to write some comments in the chat, please make them G, maybe PG, but not R or X on X. And as always, we're very grateful for you being part of Two-Way. So today, still a lot of speculation about what went wrong. Most of the focus continues to be on the people in the helicopter and what they might have done wrong, even though the Secretary of Defense says they were not inexperienced. They were simply on a training mission. New York Times is reporting that the controller at the switch was doing two jobs, outgoing and incoming aircraft, normally done by two separate people. Not clear if that played a role in the tragedy or not. But there is a big push on to understand that. A little bit more information about who was on the plane. A few names have come out, but not a complete list. As next of kin are notified. A relative of the helicopter pilot spoke out today and identified the pilot. On Capitol Hill, there's lots of fireworks in all three hearings, and we'll show you some of it. But as always, I urge you to focus on what matters, which is the whip count and whether they'll be confirmed or not. If they're interesting policy discussions, those are important too, as we learn about the positions of the nominees. But of course, mostly what we have are just fireworks, sometimes partisan, sometimes Republicans questioning the witnesses. But what matters is the vote count. Right now, Bobby Kennedy does not have 50 votes for him, but he doesn't have 50 votes against him. Kash Patel appears to be well on his way to being confirmed with Republican-only votes, whether that's 50, 51, 52, or 53. Expectation is he will be confirmed. Tulsi Gabbard remains someone who could be sunk already. In other words, there could be four Republicans, but I don't believe she'll get any Democratic votes. There could be four Republicans who are pretty much decided to vote against her. We just don't know that. Attention continues to focus on Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell, and then the assumption that there'll be some fourth vote, probably, unless she does something to help herself. I would say her performance was the same broadly as it's perceived as Bobby Kennedy's was yesterday and today, which is if you liked them, you thought there were lots of great moments and they helped themselves. Critics said they ended their chances of being confirmed with such a disastrous performance. It remains the case that Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, who chairs the Health Committee, before whom Bobby Kennedy appeared today, that he seems to be the key to confirmation on the assumption that Murkowski, Collins, and McConnell will vote no. It's also assumed that there'll be no Democratic votes. No Democrat, as far as I know, have come out for any of those three nominees, Patel, Kennedy, or Gabbard, but that doesn't mean there won't be any in the end. So we'll continue to watch it, but and show you some of the highlights. But as I said, no developments that are dispositive that I saw or heard about from sources on Capitol Hill. Nothing that tells you tonight anything different than we thought yesterday. Patel will likely be confirmed. Kennedy has a good shot and his team is increasingly confident, but he does not have 50 votes in hand. And Gabbard continues to face a lot of skepticism amongst Republicans. All right. Probably the biggest fight of the day in just the pure political world was over President Trump's performance in the briefing room. He came in and in his opening statement spoke in a way he rarely does, almost lyrically, about the tragedy, about America coming together, about the importance of the country being united, referenced God in a way he doesn't normally do. And then as he went forward, he quite clearly said that the accident, even though we don't know what caused it, was likely the fault of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Pete Buttigieg, and of the policies pursued in two Democratic administrations of DEI. Reporters asked him about it repeatedly, how he could say that, what he meant. Later in the day, when he was asked specifically at a different event if race was the factor, he said, "We don't know." He was also asked if this might happen again, this kind of accident, and he said no, he didn't think it would, which flies in the face. It's a kind of logical inconsistency that Donald Trump never shies away from. How could it be the case that he thinks the system is completely messed up by DEI and yet tell the American people flying is safe and the system is fine? Doesn't make any logical sense. On the issue of DEI, lots of commentary online, on cable, about what he said, and whether you agree with his position or not, that DEI at the FAA lowered standards in a way that made the flying public less safe. Whether you think that's factually true or even possible or not. Some of the criticism of the president was that it was simply not the right moment to be casting blame on anything or anybody. Now, this program is about having conversations that are honest and inclusive and not politically correct and not hostile, or but also not shying away from discussion. And I think, as was just discussed on Fox's The Five, I was listening to as I was getting ready here, this is not only about race, DEI, in the government and elsewhere. It's also about other factors that Donald Trump is arguing could have, and maybe did, impact the quality of the people in the FAA and in the air traffic control system. Don't know whether it's true or not, but I can tell you that there are a lot of Republicans saying when the facts come out, not just of this matter, but of the staffing of the air traffic controllers in general, that Donald Trump is going to be proven correct. I don't know that that's true, but I know Republicans are saying it. And I also know that the air traffic control system has had a shortage of workers. They've been trying to hire them and train them as quickly as possible. But as a country, just as we shouldn't shy away from asking the question, are vaccines safe for our kids? Not all vaccines, but vaccines that maybe haven't been tested as thoroughly as they might, or vaccines where there's some data suggesting they do harm kids. We shouldn't shy away from that conversation. We shouldn't turn it into anyone who says we should have the conversation as a conspiracy theorist and threatening the health of our children. And we shouldn't question their motives. We shouldn't say anyone who says there should be a conversation about the safety of vaccines, particularly for kids, is dangerous or deluded or conspiracy theorist or motivated by something negative. I think they're motivated by an interest in making sure our kids are safe. They might be factually wrong, but we shouldn't shy away from the conversation or demonize people who want to have it. Similarly, the President of the United States today made a supposition that our air traffic control system is less safe because DEI policies under Democrats have lowered the quality and the competence of people who have these very dangerous and are difficult and important jobs. I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't dismiss the debate. Not just because the President of the United States said it, but because lots of Americans, tens of millions, think that's a discussion worth having. And there are probably tens of millions who think it's emphatically true, even if they don't have the data to back it up. Okay, so we're going to start with that conversation. And I'll show you some clips from the event today. Noah, if you could bring in our three guests, that'd be great while I finish up. Second point, we talked in the morning meeting this morning about how yesterday Donald Trump got a question from a reporter he didn't want to take. And instead of insulting the reporter or answering the question, or both, he said to the reporter, you know, that's a legit question. but I'm not going to answer it now. This photo op, it was a signing ceremony for the Lake and Riley Act. Today, very different. Today, he reverted to form regarding his behavior in insulting reporters and in not passing up the opportunity to say controversial things. So welcome in our three guests, three excellent people who've been here before, and we're grateful to all three of them for coming back. Beverly Halberg, a Republican strategist, Bray Marcano, a journalist, and Mark Caputo, also a journalist. Mark writes for Axios, where he turns out scoops so quickly that even the Axios PR department can't keep up. Welcome, everybody. All right, let's listen to President Trump today saying various things at his press conference that really annoyed a lot of people, starting with number 11, please.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
All right, let's play another one. Again, this is a tone that a lot of people are objecting to. 13, please.
Which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg. A real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit.
Okay. And now, lastly, President Trump sparring with two White House reporters, Caitlin Collins of CNN, Peter Alexander of NBC, in a way that he did not do yesterday and is very familiar to many of you. Please play number 14.
Yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane, you think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. Ice Skating Committee was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real. But the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Please. Quiet.
All right. So I heard from many people today, including Ray, who said this is a reversion to the Donald Trump we saw during the COVID crisis. It's a reversion to the very personality that many Americans rejected. It's a reversion to something that is improper, unseemly, unpresidential, and that any momentum Donald Trump had is now gone. I also heard from people who said, get over it. And then I saw on social media something that sums up the get over it position. Number 2, please. It's a tweet from someone. I don't know who this person is, but their language summarized quite well the opposing argument. Okay. I'm sorry, not the opposing argument. This is summarized as the critical argument. Even if you agree with everything Trump said, to use the tragedy to make these points before we even know what happened, smearing everybody involved before we know whose fault it is objectively disgraceful. Ironically, you'd have to be extremely dumb to do that. I will say again, Donald Trump's opponents, Donald Trump's critics make a mistake when they say he's dumb, let alone extremely dumb. He is not. But that characterization of what he said in the clips we just showed and some other comments along those lines, that it's disgraceful, is something that I heard many times today, and not just denouncing it, but saying it would have a material impact on his capacity to govern successfully and to not break the momentum that he clearly had in the first 10 days. So Ray, if you could start us out and just tell folks what you think of Donald Trump, what he said today, and what impact you think it will have.
First, I don't think it was dumb, because Trump is far from dumb. I'm going to point out 2 things he did that shows how calculated he is, calculated like a fox. First thing is by using this tragedy to invoke DEI. I'm sure that he knew that that would result in outrage, and it's the kind of thing that he relishes. Then he went ahead, and who did he name in his little White House briefing? Pete Buttigieg. Why did he do that? Because Buttigieg is a potential candidate in 2028. And then thirdly, he went after Biden in a White House release that just came out, in which he says he wants to examine hiring over the last 4 years. Not since 2010, when he claims that all of this started, but the last 4 years. And I came across some data today that shows since 2010, there's been very little change in the racial and gender demographic of air traffic controllers. Do I think that this was dumb? I think what he said was dumb. I think it was misguided at best and insensitive at worst. But I don't think it's going to hurt him at all personally. I do think it's going to start putting Republicans on the defensive, who are now going to have to answer for these outbursts that take away from what we should be focusing on, which is problems at the FAA.
Beverly, do you think these things are the Trump's tone, his attacks? Do you think it matters? Do you think it hurts the country, or some other position?
I don't think it changes those who hate him, their opinion of him. I actually don't think it changes the opinions of those who are in the middle and don't like his style. And it definitely just emboldens those who really support him. And here's the thing. People did elect him because they wanted somebody tough who was going to come in and shake things up. They were tired of political correctness. And with Trump comes his authenticity of going beyond, let's just talk about policy. Let me move forward with the things I want. He's going to have the personal insults. It's not a style I like. I actually think he could have had a full day just talking about the victims, the rescue effort, just talking about what's going on in Washington, D.C., and then come out tomorrow and talk about what do we do to fix this. But that isn't his style. I think some of what he does is float ideas. And he also knows that he's gained a lot of traction. Even recent polling by Quinnipiac is showing that people support him, or at least he has good numbers so far. And he knows that DEI is one of those things that he's been pushing forward with. So he thinks it's a winning argument for him. And look, I do think that there's a place where people, and I don't know what caused this. None of us do at this point, right? Let's wait and see. I think people would want an air traffic controller as somebody who is merit-based, who has the best credentials to be able to operate that. And so I think he's going to have an angle of pushing forward with these types of jobs where lives are on the line, should be merit-based only. We're just going to have to wait and see what the policies were and if DEI was part of it.
Mark, I'll ask you the broadest possible question. What is going on at the White House with this?
Well, what's going on is Donald Trump probably saw a lot of the social media traffic from Democrats saying, look, he cut all of these transportation FAA jobs, and now there's a crash. And Trump, when things happened that were bad in his first administration, like COVID, got angry and lashed out at people. It's one of his responses is to internalize this stuff and then attack his opponents. And I think to wrap everything together, that's not only his natural response state here, but he does see some mileage in DEI. It's sort of the problem of the hammer. Everything starts to look like a nail. Well, this looked like an adequate place to attack. As a reporter, when you hear comments like this, you're like, how do I cover this straight? No matter how you cover this, and no matter how we talk about it, good 40% of people are going to be outraged, and 40% of people are going to be supportive, and 10% in the middle probably just don't care. And it's one of those eternal complications with Donald Trump.
Mark, if you were looking at like the Axios White House story list, what are the top 3 Trump stories right now in your view?
I mean, just what's on our website, or in my view?
In your view, well, hopefully there's a correlation, but just if you were the assignment editor for tomorrow, let's say, what are you looking for over the next 24 hours as the top 3 moving, dynamics?
Well, I don't want to say the story I'm working on, which we're still in a holding pattern, which is the top story in my view. So stay tuned, right? It is.
You mean a story? You mean on a story on a topic that none of us are thinking about?
Well, it's not, none of us are thinking about, but it's just kind of a breaking news story. But kind of moreover, generally, obviously there's absolutely no way to escape the Trump response to this. Second is just how his administration's nominees are faring. And then thirdly, I'm just basing this on my own coverage of it. We did something really quick the day before last on the buyout plan. We reported first, or some people resent the word buyout, the idea of paying out or getting federal workers to leave the job early and paying them a severance, so to speak, in the meantime. And that exploded on our website. So anything relating to his personnel, policy, and budget matters are also just kind of sort of top of mind, because our readers are really, really interested in that.
Okay. Again, if you want to be on the conversation, please raise your hand. Beverly, up to you. You want to do RFK first, or you want to do Tulsi Gabbard first?
Let's do RFK, or if I can do a little bit of a combo, but RFK, let's go with him.
Okay, let's do it with RFK. All right. So Bobby Kennedy today in front of a second committee, the Health Committee, and significant there that some of the senators are the same between finance and health. And the chair of this committee is Senator Cassidy of Louisiana. He's a doctor. We've talked about this before. Most people think if there's a 4th vote against Kennedy, it is Bill Cassidy. And there's signs today of things Cassidy said that suggested he was a skeptic, and signs today that said he might be coming around. First, though, I want to show you Bobby Kennedy with Bernie Sanders talking about drug company money to give you an idea that today was plenty heated like yesterday. Number 10, please.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? That's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies; it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh no!
And protecting their interests.
Oh. I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had small contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie, you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but you have not answered. Last question.
Okay. Now, all 3 of you, our guests here, Ray, and Mark and Beverly, I want you to watch Bill Cassidy talking to Bobby Kennedy, and then I just want y'all to say whatever knowledge you have or body language reading you can do. Where do you think Cassidy is right now? Play number 15, please.
My responsibility is to learn, try and determine if you can be trusted to support the best public health. A worthy movement called MAHA to improve the health of Americans, or to undermine it, always asking for more evidence and never accepting the evidence that is there. I looked at the article from Dr. Mawson, and it seems to have some issues. I'll just put that to the side. And that is why I've been struggling with your nomination. There are issues ultra-processed food, obesity, we are simpatico. We're completely aligned. And as someone who has discussed immunizations with thousands of people, I understand that mothers want reassurance that the vaccine their child is receiving is necessary, safe, and effective. We agree on that point, the two of us, but we've approached it differently. And I think I can say that I've approached it using the preponderance of evidence to reassure, and you have approached using selected evidence to cast doubt. Now, put differently, we're about the same age. Does a 70-year-old man, 71-year-old man who has spent decades criticizing vaccines and who's financially vested in finding fault with vaccines, can he change his attitudes and approach now that he'll have the most important position influencing vaccine policy in the United States?
Beverly, what's your read? Is Cassidy leaning yes or leaning no or already decided?
Well, I think if we look at past nominees, one of the things that's been the biggest push is whether or not X and Twitter and all the MAGA minions, so to speak, are going to be putting pressure on him to actually vote yes for RFK. So I think a lot happens whether or not somebody's going to be feared to be in primary down the road. That's what we're seeing behind the scenes. I lean towards what you're going to see with Republican senators. I think Kash Patel is in. It's whether or not they're going to go for either RFK or if they're going to go for Tulsi Gabbard. I think some of them are like, I'm going to throw my hat in for one, but I'm not going to do both. And they're playing a little bit of that game. But I will say on the Bernie Sanders, we went from onesies yesterday to definitely RFK wanting to get at him today. And I actually think he won that debate because the reality is many workers also are part of unions. Unions do pressure union workers to give political contributions. So this idea that workers aren't necessarily part of these medical corporations, big pharma, is a farce. And I think he won that debate, especially when Bernie Sanders at the end, he said, well, it's only 1.5 out of, and I forget what the number was total.
Mark, thank you, Beverly. Mark, what's your read of Cassidy? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, sir.
No, I had muted myself because I'm getting over the flu and I was making terrible noises. I think Cassidy was basically saying, please give me a reason for me to vote yes. Like, help me out here. I'm not sure RFK did that, but I think Cassidy's in cycle, and so that might be all the medicine that Cassidy needs.
He is in cycle.
Because
Ray. Ray.
Beverly is right. There's going to be one sacrificial lamb. I think Mark is right. I think that Cassidy was trying to get his objections on the record before he votes yes.
Okay.
I got to say though, the idea that Bernie Sanders is a stooge of a pharmaceutical lobby is that's some good shit.
All right. Tulsi Gabbard. She's been largely quiet, adhering to the normal protocol of not speaking out during the interval between being nominated and appearing before the committee. She came out today well aware of what the hard questions would be, well aware of how she's been painted by her critics in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Here she is in her opening statement, making a strong defense of her patriotism. Number 8, please.
Before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. Accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Okay. We talked this morning about how Tom Cotton has been a strong defender of Tulsi Gabbard. chairman of the committee, will carry a lot of sway. Here is Tom Cotton defending her on number 9, please.
I'm dismayed by the attacks on Ms. Gabbard's patriotism and her loyalty to our country. For instance, Hillary Clinton has smeared Ms. Gabbard, calling her an asset of a foreign nation. Let me remind everyone that Ms. Gabbard has served in our Army for more than 2 decades. She has multiple combat tours, and she still wears the uniform to this day. She has undergone 5 FBI background checks. I spent more than 2 hours last week reviewing the latest, putting eyes on more than 300 pages. It's clean as a whistle. It's fine that we have differences of opinions on policies and programs. I suspect some of my Republican colleagues might disagree with some of Mrs. Gabbard's votes in the House of Representatives. Just as I suspect that some of my Democratic colleagues might criticize Ms. Gabbard's statements and actions since she saw the light and left the Democratic Party. But I sincerely hope that no one today will impugn Ms. Gabbard's patriotism and integrity.
So she walked back a lot of stuff, but for some reason she wouldn't say Snowden was a traitor. And that left a bad taste in the mouth of some of the senators, it was clear. So, Beverly, where do you think that nomination stands? And if you were Tulsi Gabbard, what senators would you be worried about?
Definitely Lindsey Graham. I think this is a tough one all the way around. I do think Senator Tom Cotton coming out in such a strong defense of her, even went on Fox News early this morning to talk about his defense of her. You even have, of course, a friend of this program, Meghan McCain, doing a lot of press, promoting Tulsi Gabbard. I think there is that element that is showing, hey, she is a patriot. This is who we want. But her, I agree with you, her refusing to say that Ed Snowden was a traitor may be a no-go for some of the Republican senators. I'm not sure if she thread the needle. I think a lot of people are hoping, but I've also heard from some conservative Republicans that are saying if you have to have a sacrificial lamb, make it RFK because of the pro-life stance, which they can't agree with.
Yeah. Mark, what's your sense of how enthusiastically the White House will fight for her if they need to go hand-to-hand combat to win over enough senators?
The last time I asked them that question, they were like, we're all in, it's going to happen. But let's see now. I don't think that this committee meeting went very well because there were very few of these sort of overly friendly questions from her side. Like you saw with RFK in his hearing, a lot of the Republican senators would tee up just how great RFK was. You see the same thing with Kash Patel. You don't really see that with Tulsi Gabbard because the Intelligence Committee is a little different. It's very in line with the intelligence community, and the intelligence community clearly doesn't like Tulsi Gabbard. So it's a problem. Maybe she gets out of committee, but after that, it does look, even if that happens, that the White House is going to have to do some work. They had thought for a while that all of their nominees were going to make it. If I ask them that question again, they'll say yeah. But they did acknowledge that of all of their nominees, she would face the most turbulence, and she is.
Ray, do you think she's going to be confirmed?
Yes, I think this reminds me of Hegseth, and I think she gets in. I think a line that may have helped her a lot was, "I'm not Trump's puppet," which I think goes a long way with the folks in the Intelligence Committee who are more aligned with intelligence gathering.
Okay. Continue to be a lot of focus on Susan Collins, on Lisa Murkowski, on Mitch McConnell. And it does not appear to me that any of those two, either of those two or Kash Patel, are going to get Democratic votes. At this time, it does not appear that way to me. And again, the calculus is simple. No Democratic votes. If they do lose those same 3 who voted against Hegseth, they have to hold every other Republican. And in the case of Kennedy, in the case of Gabbard, there's still some Republicans who are not at yes yet. They may never get there. And so it's going to be interesting to see. I will say today that people I talked to in both parties were very impressed with both Secretary Duffy and Secretary Hegseth. People thought their communication skills were great. And at a time of crisis, that's important. Also notable to me that the vice president appeared in the briefing room and gave remarks along with the secretaries it's not that that never happens, but it's kind of unusual to let him have a billing there, along with the secretaries who have line authority over this matter, and of course, the president himself. Mark, just to check in on your reporting, does it match mine that Vance is extremely powerful and influential in this
Very much so.
administration?
You know, he has been the Leg Affairs director de facto for the administration and has been one of the chief forces in shepherding through the nominees, played a huge role for Hegseth.
Beverly, is there a wing of the party at this point that's not wildly enthusiastic about the vice president, as was true not that long ago when people expressed open disappointment when he was put on the ticket?
Yeah, there are a lot of Republicans who were disappointed that he was the pick, but I think as his communication has proved to be so superb, I think a lot of people have easily been able to get behind him. He has a very affable disposition, authentic still, but a different style than Trump. And I'll say this as well, just I would love to know the history. Mark, you're an historian, so would love to know this. Have we ever had a secretary be sworn in and have to be on the job as quickly as Sean Duffy as Department of Transportation Secretary? Just, what was it, about an hour or two after he was sworn in, he had to hit the ground running to go see the tragedy at the Potomac.
Yeah, I don't remember anything quite like that. And again, the Republicans have been arguing that means the other folks should be confirmed. Ray, it's been a long time since there was a Buckeye in the White House. How are people in Ohio feeling about their favorite son? Is his rising influence something people there are noticing and appreciating?
If this were a love fest, it would be one of the largest that I think I've ever seen. The folks in Ohio, I live about, 20 minutes from Middletown, Ohio, where J.D. Vance grew up. And people in this state are just flipping out over him. And for some very good reasons. He is more authentic. He's extremely well spoken. He's sharp. And early on, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in this state, there are people looking forward to, after Trump leaves office, 8 years of J.D. Vance. I mean, they love him that much.
Interesting. All right. Bring folks in. We've got a bunch of clips of Kash Patel fighting with Democrats, including Adam Schiff. I'm tempted to show them. Tempted to show you Marsha Blackburn asking him about the Jeffrey Epstein files, but we'll skip those. Still want to bring folks in. As always, when I bring you in, unmute yourself, tell us where you're from and what's on your mind. And again, if you've got your hand up but you want to be in the conversation, if you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand. All right, let's start with Richard. Richard, unmute, welcome in. Tell folks what's on your mind, please.
All right, well, thanks for having me back. Really appreciate this platform. There is definitely nothing else like this. I know you heard this just about every day, but really fantastic. You're bringing in a lot of great people. Love the morning show, never miss it. Because of work, I have to do it on tape delay, but nevertheless, I catch you. The thing that really struck me today,
Richard, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just tell folks where you are who don't know.
Oh yeah, South Florida.
Great, go ahead.
Yeah, and listening to the reports regarding the tragic air collision this morning, and then the follow-up, you highlighted a number of things, including the president's reaction. And what struck me is the president going off on the previous administration, Pete Buttigieg, DEI, all of this stuff. I don't have much use for any of those. It's true. But, whenever we have a tragedy regarding a mass shooting, it seems like the first reaction on the left is to blame something to do with guns, gun control, and so on. And the right goes bananas over that, saying, hey, just wait, let's get the facts. Don't go in that direction. Well, now we have it seems to me, the exact opposite situation. Why not just let the facts come out? I understand. I've unplugged from cable, so I'm pretty much a YouTube guy. So I don't know what's going on cable, thankfully. But the 24-hour news cycle, and you got to fill the time. And so they just drag these things out, and you bring in experts, pseudo-experts, analysts, people with guesses, hosts that don't know a whole lot. And I understand they have to fill time, so they do this. But maybe this is a pie in the sky, but wouldn't it be nice to expect a little bit more from people in positions of power like this to just hold off and just just wait to get some facts in before going down this road? Because a couple things. If it turns out that this was just, it could have been a pilot error, somebody passes out in the cockpit, some sort of equipment problem that has nothing to do with any of these issues that were brought up, you can't really take it back. And I think a particular problem here with politicians in general, but maybe more so with the president in particular, is everybody who is on his side, or at least concerned about their next election, will twist themselves into pretzels trying to either agree with him or try to mitigate it in some fashion. And I just see that as a real problem. Why can't we just let the, again, maybe pie in the sky, and maybe this is just politicians as well as cable hosts, but why can't we just let the facts come out and wait a day or two, find out what's going on, and then make some noise, but not
Richard.
right away?
Thank you, Richard. Beverly, thoughts on Richard's
I
points?
completely agree. I would love if that were the case. I think there are plenty of Republicans who would have loved President Trump to hold off till we found more, at least give a day for mourning for these families to be notified. I will say, though, with social media, it's a different ballgame. Now, of course, President Trump is giving press conferences, but there's also this other side. There were media outlets who were blaming the Trump administration as well for what took place. So everybody jumps to these conclusions immediately to try to report the story first, even if it's just their own personal social media account. And so since everybody can be a reporter, so to speak, these days, it's this mad rush. So, I mean, if you were on X last night, it was kind of a dumpster fire with all the allegations. You have to wait quite a few hours to see what is actually the case. I mean, we even saw there were survivors for a while, is what it was. People were reporting, so to speak. This is Trump. People turned a blind eye to him because this is who he is. But I agree with you. This is a side of him I wish he wasn't.
Mark.
Trump is the first Twitter president, and this is what you get with Twitter.
Ray.
I wish we could look at the facts first, but in our entire history, we've never been able to.
Richard, thank you. Great topic. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Let's keep up with Richard's. Other Richard, come on in. Unmuted. Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Rich from South Florida.
Hey.
Adam Schiff today was detestable. I can't stand him. I've got no respect for him, but Snowden came up a lot in the hearings today with Tulsi. And I just can't get over the leadership being so upset about Snowden and understanding his story, and the fact that he leaked that our government is defying our Fourth Amendment rights and spying on us all the time. And if it's right for our security, make the case. And the fact that these senators are just so like, I can't believe how you would defend this person. He exposed them breaking the law. And I just think it's hilarious that that's the hill that they're going to die on.
Yeah. Richard, do you think Snowden's a traitor?
No.
Do you think he broke the law?
Maybe.
Do you think he should be punished?
No.
Okay. Snowden has divided the right and the left and the establishment from the anti-establishment. Mark, what do you think, if anything, will happen to Snowden or with Snowden under this administration?
You know, I was thinking about that today. Could Donald Trump pardon him? Possibly. He's been in Russia for so long, though, he might be, I don't know, damaged goods or whatever. I don't know. I think is it Rich's point? I mean, the reality is the intelligence community is so closely intertwined with the Senate Intelligence Committee and vice versa. And Tulsi Gabbard is basically a heretic. And Washington is a place that does not suffer heretics. And so if the IC gets its way, figuratively speaking, they would burn her at the stake. And they're doing their damned level's best currently to do that.
Beverly, how do you feel about Snowden?
I think Trump is waiting to see whether or not Tulsi Gabbard is confirmed, and he may look at a pardon if she is. He's always testing the waters, testing polling to see what happens. And I think he wants to see whether or not people would say, even if I wouldn't have taken those steps that Edward Snowden did, what has happened in our FBI and CIA, et cetera, is so bad, he had to expose it. So it really depends on where the American people are. And I think Trump always follows them.
I think it was Chuck Grassley today that in talking to Kash Patel, he mentioned how important whistleblowers are in protecting them. And, you know, I'm trying to watch 3 hearings at the same time, but it rung a tune of like, no, we're doing something wrong and illegal and people need to know. And he felt that the only outlet was going to the press, not to enemies, not to be treasonous, not to share classified information with adversaries. It was like, no, people need to know that we're doing illegal stuff all the time. And I think it was brave and it was a good thing. And the fact that the elite in DC still think that like they need to thwart this and this is just so unbelievable. Forget them. Forget them. You're spying on me all the time. You're spying on you all the time. Get out of here. Don't do it.
Richard, no doubt in my mind, you're speaking for tens of millions. Not everybody, but tens of millions. Thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you the one and only Chris Simmons. Chris Simmons of Atlanta, Georgia, rejoins us after another brief hiatus because Chris has other things to do besides being on every two-way. Chris, welcome in. Thank you for coming back. What is on your mind, sir?
Well, you pretty much can guess what I want to mention today.
Oops. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I hit the wrong button, but you're all good. Go ahead.
These DEI comments mixed in with a tragedy, it's not just a fact of wait to get the facts. On the one hand, the man claims he wants to unify the country, and then with no data, for all we know, there were 3 white guys working those plane landings. They might have been people who've been there for 10 years. He knows nothing. But what he does believe, and I agree with Ray, he is brilliant. And part of his brilliance is he knows the red meat that a certain part of his base loves to eat. And they love to eat this mythology that unqualified minorities are doing all this bad stuff. So whenever he can inject that into the conversation, he does and he will. And that's why he only got roughly 15% of the black vote last time. And I predict the Republicans will get less next time if he keeps this up. I think no matter what topic the man has mentioned in the first 10 days, DEI has come up in almost every department of the government that he wants to go after. It's something to do with DEI. So, we just don't know the facts. Yeah. But he's got a certain agenda he's pushing. And let me just say this, Mark. What really troubles a lot of Black Americans, since we're supposed to have a real conversation here, what really troubles a lot of Black Americans, that so many white Americans have such a benign reaction to what is clearly a racist adjacent strategy on his part. And that's what we think. And that is not helping unify the country when he does what he did today.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for that. For those who don't know, Chris has done a lot of work in the private sector in corporate America on HR and race issues. I'm wondering, I've been meaning to look for an opportunity to ask you this. What do you think?
I'm also a Mensa member, so some of us are actually pretty darn smart. Just saying.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You went to a good college too.
Pretty good one.
What is driving these corporations, some corporations, to scrap their DEI policy? What is driving that?
Fear of being Robbie Starbucked. If they have a large
tell people who don't know what that means.
Robbie Starbucks.
I know what it means, but tell people.
I know you do. Robbie Starbucks is a guy on social media who goes after big companies that he thinks are doing too much DEI. And if the company has a large, generally rural white customer base, he essentially blackmails people like Tractor Supply and Walmart and Costco. He's trying to do Costco to, be boycotted if you don't cut out the program.
Yeah.
Now, some of the companies that he also is now going after it's because of the Supreme Court ruling, which really was designed to go after what happened in colleges. But now there's a lot of thinking in the legal community that they will also be liable to lawsuits based on their program. So they're scared of lawsuits and they're scared of boycotts.
Why are they more scared of those things now that Donald Trump's been elected, or is that just a coincidence?
I think the court ruling gave this group of people who frankly been working on this stuff for 30 years, maybe longer. It gave them a lot of momentum to finally make the final push. And it just happened to be coincident with the timing of Trump coming back in the office. I think without the Supreme Court ruling, he would have a lot less ability to push the button on the corporations the way he's doing. He could have always done what he's doing in the federal government. But I think the corporate world is more concerned because of the Supreme Court ruling.
The thing that confuses me a little bit, I say respectfully about the point of view that you're expressing, is this is the guy who rose to political prominence to some extent, making racially charged remarks about Barack Obama, who in New York City and in his first presidential campaign never missed an opportunity to cleverly deploy race. And yet, won re-election, as you like to point out, not with overwhelming black support, but with plenty of non-white support. And plenty of support from people who support DEI. So how do you think this what he did today and his continued efforts to use race as a dog whistle, how do you think it will impact a guy who's not seeking re-election?
Oh, I don't think it'll impact him at all. He's on the loose. There's no stopping him now. For the next 4 years, he's going to be as crazy and wild as he wants to be, because I don't think he's a guy who's concerned about what happens with the party when he's done. I think he's concerned with leaving a certain legacy. And his legacy, he wants to have been the guy that changed it all up. But, and Mark, I do want to also just point out for you and the rest of the audience, we really need to stop saying, significant support of non-minorities, because we could have another discussion, which I'm an expert on, about how Latinos, 58% of them think they're white. They say they are. So they're not. Latinos and blacks are two totally different worlds. You got 45% of them. You got about 15% of us. That's a huge difference.
What do you want to say about Asians?
Well, they're such small percentage. They don't drive elections.
All right. Mr. Simmons, thank you very much. I open the floor.
Anytime.
Anybody want to comment? Any of the three of you want to comment on anything Chris said?
Yeah, I'll comment. I do want to just say, Chris, thank you for your thoughts on that. And I would say, speaking for a lot of Republicans, we would say that you don't need DEI because we think you are smart enough to get the job. So I think a lot of Republicans view this as, in many ways, could be racist policy to say that minorities aren't smart enough to get a job. But on the other side of that, I want to say from a female's perspective, there's a lot that DEI that goes into it, including transgender side of things, also females, making sure females have a certain quota. I think even females, we want to be thought of, we're smart enough to get the job and don't need the quota to get there. So I think there are a lot of people who view DEI as a more encompassing thing versus just race, but that gender, especially transgender issues, come into play as well.
Can I respond to that, Mark?
Yes, sir.
I know of very few major companies that actually had a quota for women, but the companies had targets, and companies worked a lot harder to find the women. And Republicans like to forget the reason the programs existed, because I have law firm clients, very brilliant women in their 60s, who can tell me about when they came out of law school, they were told, well, honey, your law degree looks fine and your grades are excellent, but you can be a paralegal here. So this presumption that merit would always have been rewarded, we know that's a lie in this country. It's not been the case. And we haven't all of a sudden become all sweet and perfect and innocent.
Right.
Yeah, I write a lot about DEI. For those that don't know, I write a weekly column in one newspaper and columns for other newspapers. So, Chris, I hope you send me your email. But I think the untold story about DEI is not the anti-DEI movement now, because that's really been going on since the 90s. The untold story is all of the companies in America that are pushing back against the anti-DEI crowd. And like, as I said, I'm planning to write a lot about that this year. You don't hear a lot about that because they're quietly going about their business without making a big fuss. Eventually, those companies will come to the fore, and we'll see what most America wants, which is fairness in hiring, regardless of what you call it.
Mark?
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Simmons, thank you as always. Come back regularly, please. Great to see you. John Bailey, come on in, unmute, tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, sir?
Hi, I'm in Northern Virginia in Arlington. We talked last week before the Washington Commanders game, and sadly we lost, but it was a good season, so we're happy about that. I just wanted to say, I think that asserting that the president didn't know anything about the background on this or any of the details, it's not believable, because I think he probably knows more than we do, and he has an uncanny ability to sometimes be right about things that are not apparent. So I would just assert that he probably knew that the control tower was short. One person was controlling two planes, and he connected some dots that maybe he should not have. So I think that, we always jump to conclusions. It's human nature. It's just the way it's worked since people have walked the earth. So, I would ask kind of your thoughts on that, as well as the guy's the commander-in-chief. He knows things that we don't know. He gets the information from sources that we don't have.
Yeah. My perspective is you're exactly right. It's not always borne out, but he often will say things exercising what some might call uncharacteristic propriety. In other words, giving something backed up by something he knows, but doesn't reveal what he knows. Sometimes he'll tease it a little bit, which I think he did today. Some of his advisors have teased it to me, that there is backup on some of these things, at least in their mind and his mind. And I think that, again, this is to me a little bit of Groundhog Day. I'm not saying that Donald Trump won't pay any price for what he did today. He might. But what I am saying is, those who say to me emphatically, as many did today, that he will pay a price, that this is both a cause and a reflection of a dire straits, I just think you're not looking at his history. He simply bounces back too quickly, too often, for people to suggest that today will have any impact whatsoever. And again, I go back to my Green Bay diner. Insulting Caitlin Collins is not something anybody in a Green Bay diner is talking about tomorrow. Not one person. Mark.
Well, to tie in what you're both saying from the reporter side, it is why we, as mainstream media writers, reporters, need to be careful with Donald Trump, because very often he's right. He says inflammatory things. And so we just need to report the facts we have. So, for instance, we wrote the story about, in advance of him issuing the newest order or presidential memorandum, directing the FAA to examine DEI programs in response to this crash. We said that so far there was no evidence of a DEI link. And the reason we put that is we're not saying there is, and we're not saying there isn't. All we know is that so far there isn't. That can change with him. And that's one of the things I think people need to be careful of in doing forecasts, is that all forecasts are sort of inevitably guesses. They have margins of error. And we as reporters really hurt ourselves in sort of taking positions where we predict the future or say, oh, something's true or something's false without having all the information. And Trump is often an accelerant in that.
John, thank you. Very much appreciate you coming back. All right, Doug Burgum, Interior Secretary, confirmed tonight, 79 to 18. So the Democrat boycott of yes votes on Trump nominees apparently is over. Only 18 no votes against Burgum. Very nice guy, very accomplished businessman, and pretty good record as governor too. So want to thank Mark and Beverly and Ray and everybody who came to ask questions. Appreciate it. We'll all be refreshing the website to see when Mark's story on Axios runs. Eager to see anytime. It's the way the reporting process works. But grateful to you all for spending the hour with us, and hope you'll come back soon. Thanks. Thank you. All right. Some preview of upcoming attractions. Tomorrow morning on the morning meeting, Meghan McCain will join us. Meghan is very close, as was said, I think, earlier, to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi is the godmother of one of Meghan's kids. Meghan has spent time up on Capitol Hill during the confirmation process and has been advocating on media, social media, for her friend. So Meghan will join us to give us her perspective on where things stand with her friend Tulsi Gabbard in the confirmation process. On this program tomorrow night, 23 hours from now, Mark Andreessen, the tech visionary and recent Trump supporter and advisor, will be here. We'll talk to him about all manner of things. We'll talk about technology, Silicon Valley, attitude towards Donald Trump, AI, and he's a very, very bright guy, so you won't want to miss that. Monday, special program, will be not part of our usual programming, but 2 p.m. Eastern, unless I have that wrong. No, is it 2 p.m. Eastern? There
Yes,
it is. 2 p.m. Eastern on Monday. The second installment of our series with David Burrell, The Diner. We're going to talk about public attitudes towards buying Greenland. Some Americans think it's a great idea, some think it's a bad idea. We're going to look at a poll on that question, and then we're going to want to talk to all of you about what you think. If you subscribe to my Substack, you'll soon be getting some materials related to this question, some of the research, some of the poll, and we'd love for you to come prepared Monday to talk about what you think. Is this a good idea, bad idea, something should be discussed, something that is shouldn't even be on the table? We'll want to hear from you. So special time for a program Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We hope you will join us for that. Again, grateful to Beverly and Ray and Mark, and grateful to all of you for being part of Two Way, and we'll see you at 9 a.m. Eastern time right here for the morning meeting. Good night, everybody.